Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Voice of the People podcast here on kxnet.com. I'm Nicholas Kwalik, and today we are focusing on the race for the office of governor for the state of North Dakota. Joining me now is the ND GOP endorsed candidate and the sole congressman for the state of North Dakota. That's Congressman Kelly Armstrong. Congressman, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So when I say the endorsed candidate for governor of North Dakota, how does that sound to you?
It sounds like we had a good convention and that we got the support of the grassroots, and we're going to run through the tape till June 11th.
Mhm. Let's go back in time for a second, if we might. Your thoughts on how the convention went for you and perhaps for the party specifically.
Well, I'm an old state party chairman. I ran that convention in 2016. The last time we had an open governor's race, I always tell people that was the best 48 hours of my life. I never want to do ever again. Conventions are always rowdy. They're always fun. They're always contentious. So you get a bunch of people in a room that really care about the future of the state, care about the future of the Republican Party, and we wouldn't have it any other way. I always enjoy being there. It's part of the process, and we had a lot of fun.
And for a minute, talk about why you picked your running mate, Michelle Sprinden.
First of all, when you pick somebody to be lieutenant governor, the number one thing is if anything happens, medical emergency, all of those things, that they can step in and be governor. I have tremendous respect for Michelle. I consider her a close personal friend. She comes from Fargo. She's been in the legislature. She's been a public school teacher. She's homeschooled her kids. She's been a counselor. These are all issues that North Dakotans care deeply about. They're issues that I have worked on, but it really gives it. But I don't have nearly the depth of knowledge on that stuff that she does. She served on the Appropriations Committee and in the legislature for the last 6 years. So we just think it's a really great fit. She's got 4 kids that live in North Dakota. One's graduating high school this year. I have 2 kids in high school and junior high. So we have a vested interest in the future of our state, not just for us, not just politically, because we really, really want this place to still be as great as it is now when our kids have the opportunity to stay here and build their life here.
I will get back to the run for governor in just a second, but I want to focus on the other thing on your plate right now, and that's being our congressman. How are things going in Congress?
It's messy. It's 2-vote majority. I think this is the new normal. The Senate Democrats have 1-vote majority. We right now have a 2-vote majority. So it's been interesting, but at the end of the day, we're working through it. And I think one of the best things that has two best things that have happened since Republicans took back the majority is, one, we opened the Capitol back up. I was very, very concerned that far too many of my colleagues got a little used to isolating themselves from their constituents during COVID and all of those things. So that, and then also we've democratized it more. And that's the one thing I hope we keep moving forward is rank and file members can bring amendments to bills, argue them on the floor, and do all of those things. But we got through all the noise a couple weeks ago. And now it's just really everything slows down in an election season, not just in this Congress, but in every Congress. So we still got things to do. I'd really like to see a farm bill get out of the House before we leave for July or August recess. I think that's still doable. And then we'll work through that. That's the big ticket item that I think most North Dakotans care about the most as we move into the election season.
So how do you take your experience in our nation's capital and apply it to possible becoming our next governor?
Well, I think 2 things. One, my 6 years as a legislator really are going to help. And then 2, the 6 years out here, I mean, our biggest threat in North Dakota isn't floods, droughts, blizzards, tornadoes, any of those things. Right now, our biggest threat is an overbearing EPA, a Biden administration that has absolutely placed our number 1 and 2 industries under attack. I don't know of a better way to say it, with ag and energy. And we're going to have real opportunities to work with the legislature, work with hopefully President Trump, and work with the Attorney General to push back on these regulations. Just in April, two regulations came out that are uniquely existential to North Dakota. One was a mercury rule, which absolutely targets lignite energy, and another one was a heavy equipment tailpipe rule, which absolutely targets anybody hauling soybeans or sugar beets or potatoes anywhere. So we're going to work really hard to push back and let North Dakotans be in charge of North Dakota's future.
You mentioned some of the bigger threats that in your mind to North Dakota. How about one or two of the biggest threats to our country right now?
Well, I think the long-term biggest threat we have is 34 trillion in debt. We don't even talk about it in a meaningful way anymore. 1 trillion seconds ago, woolly mammoths walked the earth. 1 trillion, not 34 trillion. By the time I leave here, it'll be over 35 trillion. And we absolutely have to get discretionary spending under control because we have to prove we can do that, because we have to have real talks about the 75% of our congressional budget that's on autopilot. Short-term biggest threats, the border. You know, you can talk to sheriff in Grand Forks, sheriff in Fargo, ask them what their number 1, 2, and 3 issues are. They'll say fentanyl, fentanyl, and fentanyl. 100% of the fentanyl is made by the cartels. We have lost operational control of the border. This administration, in its first 30 days in office, issued 34 plus executive orders that really drove that crisis. So we have to figure out how to deal with that. There are ways we can deal with the drug dealing and things in that in North Dakota, but we absolutely have to figure out how to give our law enforcement agents on the southern border operational control again.
Let's go back, if we may, to the race for governor here. You have, as we mentioned earlier, the endorsement of the NDGOP. You're also endorsed by current Senators John Hoeven and Kevin Cramer. You know, no secret, you don't have the current endorsement of Governor Burgum because he's endorsing his Lieutenant Governor, Tammy Miller. So tell us about the kind of spot that puts you in having some endorsement while you don't have endorsement of the sitting governor.
I don't really think it puts me in any spot. I mean, Governor Burgum picked Lieutenant Governor Miller as his running mate. I mean, we worked with each other in April on the Teddy Roosevelt Library language we tried to authorize out here. Obviously, we have a good relationship with the governor's office, have since we've been in Congress. It's just politics. I mean, I'm really honored to have Senator Hoeven and Senator Cramer's support. I've got to know them over my time in politics, and I can't tell you, I couldn't do this job in DC without the relationship we have with their offices. So that means a lot to me personally. But at the end of the day, voters vote for the person on the ballot, and we're going to try and give them every single reason they can to vote for me.
At the same time, though, there are, as you know, campaign ads running on your side and Lieutenant Governor Miller's side. So you know, you mentioned it's just politics, but how do you walk that gentle line, if it is a gentle line, of trying to, you know, get the upper edge, I suppose, over your competition?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing we do is we go everywhere. It's a little hard because we're on a 4-week run in DC right now. We have some really busy weekends, fly into North Dakota somewhere, try and hit as many places as we can in 36 hours and come back. But, you know, I mean, TV ads, I mean, politics is part of it. But the one thing I've learned over the last 5 years out here is there are a lot of politicians that poll test answers and say what they think the voters want to hear. And that's always frustrated me, but it really frustrates me now. So when we think that's going on, we're going to run. I mean, almost all of our stuff we use aren't actually our words. They're quotes from the papers, they're quotes from media things. But I was telling you, I think we've done over 100 interviews, radio, TV, newspaper since we started this. And that's the single best way I know how to campaign, because when you get in front of a reporter in North Dakota, they're going to ask you questions about what they're doing. We've been to Max Bass and Colfax and Leeds and Dickinson and everywhere in between. We've had tons of crowds show up, and people are really fired up, and we're excited about it.
So I guess this may just seem very a simple question, and I suppose practical as well, but why now, Congressman? Why now run for the office of governor?
Well, it comes up. I mean, like I said, the last time was 2016. This time it's open. We looked at it. We thought a lot about it. We thought about what we did. I talked to my wife and my family first. Got a lot of calls, a lot of support from our supporters, and you know we're gonna be in the same fights. I've been in these fights in DC. I think I've been in every fight that matters, whether it's sham impeachments from President Trump. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, privacy, against Green New Deal politics, all of that. Those are the same things that are going to affect our farmers, our ranchers, and our small business owners in every community all across the state. Because the one thing I've learned out here in 5 years is big business and large corporations, they can sure deal with more regulation. They have an entire floor full of lawyers to deal with regulation. But when you keep piling on that regulation, whether it's immigration, whether it's trying to get a custom combiner from South Africa, or just 3 more pieces of paper that you got to file at your retail store in small town North Dakota, that's money out of your pocket, out of your kid's savings account. And you are competing in a marketplace where the people who you're competing with can absorb that extra cost significantly better than you can.
Before we get to November, though, of course, we got to get through the June 11th primary. And as we said, you are endorsed, but have you given much consider? I'm sure you have, but what are your plans, or have you thought much about what you may do if you do not get past the primary?
I always tell people politics is politics. I think there's far too many people that this becomes everything in their whole life. I've been blessed. I have a great family. I have a wonderful wife. I have 2 kids. I can tell you, I'm going to go watch my kid play baseball. I didn't see him play football one time this fall. And the real sacrifice in this isn't me. I mean, flying back and forth to DC is easy. You get used to it. The greatest privilege of my life is being the one voice for North Dakota in Congress. But your family suffers a little bit. So you know what? I mean, I'm going to spend more time with my family, figure out what happens next. My dad's family business is in Dickinson. We've been in the ag and energy business. I did that for a long time before I got involved in Congress. And there's still tremendous opportunities to build Main Street in Western North Dakota, whether it's politically or professionally.
And then should we get past June, then we get to November. Of course, someone you're very familiar with is State Senator Merrill Pepcorn. Is there any different strategy from facing off against a fellow Republican versus Democrat?
I'm an old American Legion baseball coach, and I always just kind of do the same thing. Take care of the baseball. Baseball's great. It's the only sport without a score clock. If you field ground balls thrown to first base, if you get base hits up the middle, if you do that, no, we're going to do the same thing. I've got really smart people who I trust very much working for me, and we're going to continue to go everywhere, barnstorm the entire state of North Dakota and tell them about what we think is what the great opportunities are for North Dakota's future.
Although I guess with Major League Baseball recent implementation of the time clock, well, that's another discussion.
That's a pitch clock. The games still go until somebody wins. So
I know. I'm still rooting for the Guardians. Thank goodness they're in first place. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about your priorities. So if you do get elected and become our next governor, what's priority day number one?
Property tax. It really is. It's one of those things that this is the reason you have to campaign, because you got to go out and listen to people. Prior to doing this, I'm for lowering every tax. I had said, let's get rid of the income tax. I can tell you nobody's talking about the income tax anywhere in North Dakota, but they're really talking about property tax. We have a ballot measure out there, all of those different things, but people want reform and they want reduction. And we have to deliver that. And if we don't, and if the legislature and the governor's office aren't paying attention to that, it's a really bad policy decision and it's a really bad political mistake. So that obviously will be number one. The other thing is, we're going to bring in an era of radical transparency. We talk a lot about partisanship. I'm in the most partisan town in the universe, I think. But the reality is government gets the worst when it's paternal. When it says, if you knew what I knew, you would do what I do. It's the 21st century. We should be as open and transparent about where all of our taxpayers' dollars are being spent. Doesn't matter if it's the legacy fund, state investment board, state board of higher ed. My wife is from Oslo, Norway. They have the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. You can go to the website and look at it in real time and see where that money is being spent and where Norwegians' tax dollars are being spent. There's no reason we shouldn't do that here. I think being open and honest with everybody is the single best way in order to effectuate policy that people really care about.
And those two ideas that you had, how do you see those actuating with taxes and being transparent?
Well, a couple are different, right? A lot of the transparency is administrative. So you can just administer. You can demand that in the government's office or in the governor's office. You can say, we're opening this up. We're not hiding behind open records requests. We're not doing those things. We are going to make this stuff available because the North Dakota voters are smart. And if they can't see something because you will drag out an open records request for 4 months, maybe instead of trying to hide it from them because you're not really sure they're gonna like where it's at, maybe you just shouldn't be doing that. From the property tax issue, that's easy. You start having meetings with legislators and appropriators and all of those people right away, making sure they know that this is a number one priority. And hopefully it's a priority for them because they got to be hearing the same thing I am. And then secondly, you start getting people in the room, small town school board members, large community city commissioners, county commissioners from the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state, because the legislature has actually been good. Right now, the legislature buys down about 1/3 of the local property tax. but we haven't been very good at figuring out how to deal with the increase in local property tax. We've done transparency, we've done all of that. Problem is nobody cares about what it says on the top of your property tax statement. They only care what it says at the bottom. So I think there's a role for the state to play. I think the state can look at locals and say, if you're going to take that 1/3 buy down, then we're going to have a conversation about what the maximum you can raise your property tax budget is every year. And that's important because if you get into mills and you get into all of these other things, different communities do it differently. But I think it's really about time to start talking about it.
And you've drawn an almost perfect straight line from point to point to point with taxes, transparency, and the legacy fund. What, if anything, would you do with that fund? Because I know we've reported on here as far as the legacy fund and taxes. So what would you do? Anything different with the legacy fund?
Well, I think you can lower property taxes without it. I mean, I think you could see that with surpluses. I think you could see that particularly if you get the reform in. I think there are policy decisions you can be that keep property taxes in control and use the money you're generating from the best economy we've had in North Dakota in 3 generations. But I think with the legacy fund, the first thing too is open it up. Make sure people know where the money's being spent, both outside the state and inside the state. And then when you're doing money inside the state, it's incredibly important that the people make sure that feel that this game isn't rigged. There's a lot of that, people have lost a lot of trust in government. And I think one of the things we want to do is bring that back. So I do think investing legacy fund dollars into the state, the one thing you hear from North Dakota small businesses, entrepreneurs, their biggest headwind in trying to do this is access to capital. Well, we have some access to capital. And we should utilize that for North Dakota businesses and do those things, but we should do it in a way where everybody believes that it's a fair shake. And I'm not sure that exists right now.
Well, speaking of capital, making money, of course, how you do some of that is encouraging more families to either stay or come to North Dakota. You're from here, you know what it's like to see people come and go. Any thoughts on any initiatives that you might sort of try to get through and maybe suggest to the appropriate entities?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people working on workforce right now. I think, to be quite frank, with all the investments we have in the Commerce Department, Bank of North Dakota, all of those things, whether it's a fertilizer plant in Spiritwood, data mining north of Williston, all of that, we have 50,000 open jobs. We have 2 things we have to do. We have to try and get people to come back here who graduated from here. Are from areas like this. The first person I hired when I was a lawyer in Dickinson wasn't from North Dakota, but she was from Butte, Montana. That makes a lot of sense because she understands a community like Dickinson. Butte and Dickinson are similar. 2, every community needs water, they need power, they need cops, they need teachers, they need nurses. These are positions that we absolutely have to do a better job of recruiting and retaining. Otherwise, we won't grow. It's not just Fargo or Bismarck or Minot or Grand Forks. You won't grow any community if you don't have those things. So we're going to have to continue to push forward. I think it should be the #1 priority of the Commerce Department is how to increase our workforce. And we got to think of new and creative ways to do that because we've been working on it for a long time and some of it's been successful, some of it less so. And we have to get people to move back here and we have to get people to once we get them, a lot of them want to stay. I mean, we noticed that in the oil patch. We've noticed that everywhere. Once we get somebody who's maybe never been to North Dakota, particularly if they can handle our brisk winters, they really enjoy it here. So the key is to get them here once and show them how great a place North Dakota is to raise a family.
Yeah, what do you think in some of Governor Burgum's initiatives do you think have worked really well and perhaps some that you would like to improve upon?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's been trying. There's no silver bullet to workforce. I mean, we've been fighting this in the Bakken since 2009, and we continue to struggle, continue to do that. I think one thing for workforce that we need to figure out in a much more meaningful way is daycare. If you don't have ready access to affordable daycare, you lose a ton of that workforce that is really necessary for your community, changing demographics. And I think we got to get into high schools. I think one of the things that the governor has done really well is working with coordination amongst the State Board of Higher Ed to really start to educate North Dakota college students for the jobs we need in North Dakota. I think we should continue to build on that. And then I think there's some things, there's things I don't support out in DC that I would be interested and curious in North Dakota, which is, student loan buy downs for those high need jobs. that you really need, particularly in our smallest communities. I mean, I think if you can financially give somebody a real financial incentive to come to a small community and teach fourth grade, that's really how you have the potential to get them. So we'll have a lot of ideas. I don't have the market cornered on ideas. We're going to get a lot of smart people around the table, not just from Bismarck, by the way, not just in the bureaucracy, not just in the legislature. And we don't have all the right answers. I just hope we're asking the right questions.
Uh, Talk about the person that could potentially take over for you when it comes to Congress, Alex Balazs. What do you know about him? What have you told him? Any sort of encouragement?
You know, I spoke to Alex for about 5 minutes at the state convention. I've really, you know, I've worked really hard in North Dakota over the last 10 years to help other Republicans, both in legislative races, statewide races, do this, but particularly when it's my job and I'm on the same ballot as them. I wish them all well. They all seem to be doing well, but in this case, I'm putting my oxygen mask on and I'm going to let others help others. We've got a great competitive race. I can tell them. I thought it was the best job in all of politics. Turns out it's only the second best job in politics. And it's a tremendous responsibility to be North Dakota's only voice out in DC. So they're taking it seriously. They're all running hard and they're giving North Dakota choices, which is what we always want.
As I mentioned with Alex, and I'm sure you know this very well, there have been, I know polls will only get you so far, but there are some Americans who are not exactly pleased with either candidate for president on either side. And sometimes, as you know, that can affect, whether they just vote down ballot or individually. So what would you say to North Dakotans who may be on the fence of voting either way when it comes to president?
Well, I would say go to the polls, go look forward. What I would say is outside of personalities, outside of anything else that is going on, Donald Trump was exceptionally good to our ag and energy industry. And more importantly, he understands that states should regulate their businesses and not the federal government. And I will tell you, for the last 3 years under President Biden, I have been 80% of what we do is fighting against bad regulation that administration is putting out that will directly and detrimentally, not right now. I mean, your existing production, existing yields from a field aren't where this hurts. But when these regulations get in place, it is going to be incredibly harder 10 years from now, 8 years from now, to do what we do best and feed and fuel the world. So be very, very cognizant about that, because our number one and two, I mean, as diverse as North Dakota's economy is, and as much as we continue to grow it, ag and energy drive the entire state. And we need North Dakotans to be able to regulate North Dakota business and not the federal government.
And how, Congressman, have you been able to sort of deal with the different divides within your own party on the national level?
I talk to everybody. I try and have a relationship with everybody. You know, in politics, I say no is the second best answer you can hear. And it's the only answer you can trust 100%. I try to fight about ideas. I've found very quickly and very early on, you can be in a massive debate / fight with, say, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or a Republican at 9 a.m. and asking them to co-sponsor a piece of legislation you're working on at 10 a.m. And if you can keep those arguments about what they're about the ideology, about the idea, about the policy, then you tend not to burn bridges. And I think I've been really good at that my entire time in politics. And I think that's going to be really helpful in the governor's office as well.
And so as we sort of coming up on wrapping things up here, Congressman, what's next for you? I know you're going to be probably very busy campaigning, but what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to getting out. I mean, some people campaign because they have to. I really, really enjoy it. The nature of this business is you spend the vast majority of your time in Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, and Minot. That's just how it is, right? Air bases, military, business, largest communities, all of that. But my favorite thing is getting out outside of those communities, doing town halls in the smaller communities that exist, because they face different challenges, right? I mean, if you think we have workforce problems in Bismarck or Fargo, go to Oaks, go to Watford. I mean, go to Mott, go to Regent, go to these places. And they really appreciate the fact that even through all our growth, we still have communities from one end of the state to the other that are still struggling just to survive. And they appreciate the fact that somebody is paying attention to that, because we really mean it. I want every community in North Dakota to have every opportunity for any kid who graduates from high school there to come back there, start a job, start a business, start a life.
And finally, I guess my last question to you is, how would you like to address the people of North Dakota before we take off here?
Remember to vote on June 11th. Politics is a contact sport. The future of North Dakota deserves participation. It has really been my honor and privilege to have the opportunity to serve Western North Dakota in the state Senate, serve North Dakota in DC. And this run for governor has just really been a truly humbling experience. And I appreciate everybody's support.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. As you said, with I think you said 100 interviews coming up on something like that. Very busy schedule. So we certainly appreciate the time and giving North Dakotans an opportunity to hear what your thoughts are. So
absolutely, but I mean, if you can't talk to the press and you can't get your message out there, I don't know how. I mean, how you can do this job, because this is the only. We got all kinds of things we want to talk about, and it's pretty inefficient to call 780,000 people one-on-one on the phone.
Yeah, I would say so. It'd be one big telephone bill.
I'd love to do it, but it'd be all I do. And there is another part of both the jobs both the job I'm running for and the job I have right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Congressman Armstrong. And thank you for watching the Voice of the People podcast here on kxnet.com. We'll be back soon with more on the questions and answers affecting you, because remember, it's your voice that matters, the voice of the people.